Hello YouTube. In a video I made recently where I listed my top 10 hypertrophy movements that gave me the body I have today, I stated that pullovers made the biggest difference in my physique. And I even went as far as to say that it was a magical lift, which made a ton of people curious because when you hype up a lift and you say that it will transform your body, people want to learn more. So this is what I'm going to do today. This is not just going to be a form and technique video because there's a gazillion of them about the pullovers on YouTube. Instead, I want to answer questions I got and to offer some precisions that I never hear anywhere. So if you're someone who could never get pullovers to work, who could never fill them, and who therefore never stuck to them, listen to me because I have a lot of information to share with you guys today. So first and foremost, what exactly do the pullovers train? Anyone who has done them should know that they train the lats in priority, but they also involve the long head of the tricep and the chest. Some people only feel them in their chest or in their long head. They feel nothing in the lats. If you are one such man, I will help you correct that because to me, the pullover is one of the greatest lat builder of all time. But it's not the reason why many people say it is a magical lift. The magical component of pullovers and something that almost no lift can replicate is the ribcage expansion phenomenon. What happens when you do the movement with a dumbbell is that as the weight goes behind your body and behind your head, the ribcage has to stretch to accommodate the weight. And what it does to the body is that it expands that area in particular. Now, there are two ways to expand for the human body. It can be bone expansion or it can be muscle and tissue expansion. If you do pullovers as a growing, developing young man, as a teenager, you might notice some bone lengthening. But that is only true if you do them before you're 20 or 22. After that, most of what will happen is that the muscle will grow. In either cases, the rib cage will expand. Now you could ask me, okay, how is it possible if your bones are set that the rib cage will expand? Well, in the same fashion that even though the shoulder is a bone and set, you can quote unquote expand the shoulder by building it because you get wider. It's the same with the rib cage. And something that many people don't take into account because pullovers are sold to people as a lat builder. But what they fail to consider is that the lat is built through the stretch when the shoulder enter a full extension. There are other things that stretch with it. And the things that stretch with it make all of the difference in the expansion. These are, for example, your serratus muscle that run alongside the rib cage that are almost never trained. Most people don't even realize that they never train that muscle, even though it is highly important for aesthetics. And also your intercostal muscles that you cannot see, but you have muscles in between the ribs and these can expand, they can grow like any other muscle, and that expands the rib cage. Now, I have seen some comments of people being a little bit afraid of this and saying, man, I don't want to end up with a barrel chest. This rib expansion stuff sounds like a nightmare to me. But it's not what you think. You're not going to end up with a ridiculously large chest that looks like a barrel. What is going to happen instead is that the entire area that runs alongside your ribs is going to shape up in the shape of a V. So in truth, the only thing that this quote-unquote ribcage expansion does is that it gives you a better V taper. I guarantee you that it will not make you look ridiculous, especially if you do it once your bones are already set. So you should not be worrying about that. I guarantee you that pullovers will improve your physique 100% of the time. But to get all of these benefits of the pullover, to get the serratus expansion, the growth of the lat, etc., you have to know how to do them. And this is sort of the issue I have with most of the form and technique videos I've seen on YouTube. They focus on showing you how the pullover is done, but they forget the small details that can ruin the entire movement. Always keep in mind that the goal of the pullover is the stretching of the rib cage. So anything that impairs that stretching needs to be removed. This means, for example, that you do not want to do your pullovers laying on the bench. I see that too many times. That is not the way to do it for a very simple reason. When you do that, you lose all of the benefits of the pullover because you limit the stretch. When your back and your hips are on the bench, you are not able to fully expand the rib cage. You are not able to keep the hips low so as to create more distance between the hips and the shoulder joint, which would increase the stretching on the lats and on the rib cage. So absolutely make sure that when you do your pullovers, you do them across the bench and not laying on the bench. It's a simple rule to follow, but if you do that, you're already better off. If you are the type of person who says, I don't feel pullovers and did them laying on the bench, just doing them the proper way most likely will already fix your problem. That being said, it does not mean that you always want to keep your hips low. The beauty of doing pullovers the way I just described, and as I've shown you in the footage, is that it also allows you, as the reps get more difficult, to raise up your hips and to accompany the movement with your hips so as to be able to crank out more reps. So not only do you gain mobility in the shoulder and the hips, which allow you to stretch the rib cage, but on top of that, you are more performance. So this is, in a sense, the best of both worlds. That being said, don't make the mistake of going too far into shoulder flexion either. The issue with laying on the bench is that your shoulder is frozen in space because it has nowhere to go, it's on the bench. So it limits the range of motion and limits the recruitment and the stretch on the lat. But I've also seen many people who do the opposite, where they go too deep, they go too far. And this is also an issue because past a certain point, your lats are almost completely disengaged, they're only passively stretching, and you end up really only training the mobility of the shoulder. That in and of itself is not a bad thing. The issue is what it does to the shoulder joint. Many people, when they do pullovers, report shoulder pain. It's not because the movement is dangerous for the shoulder at all. The shoulder is doing its proper function of propelling the arm above the body and behind the body. That activates the lat. The issue is that if you go too far, what ends up happening is that the shoulder is overworked in a range of motion where it is the weakest, and you end up developing impingements, tendonitis, etc., things that you want to avoid. Instead, look at the way I'm doing pullovers in this demonstration video and look where I stop my arms. Look where I stop the expansion. I go deep, but I don't go too deep. This is the way you should do it as well. This is best for performance. It's also best for hypertrophy. A good metaphor and image I can give you that is going to put you in the correct mindset for pullovers is, I want you to think of your rib cage as an accordion. What stretches and expands when you go into the negative is not the shoulder, it's the rib cage. The shoulder is just an instrument that allows the weight to go behind you so as to get a maximal stretch in the muscle and the area that you are seeking, which means that you will never allow the shoulder to go too deep into flexion, because once you get the maximum stretch of the rib cage, you are going to return back into the positive and then start again. Another tip I have for you guys to limit the involvement of the shoulder and to also reduce shoulder pain in the movement is to play with the rotation of the elbows. So the beautiful thing about dumbbell pullovers is that you will get in a position where you can rotate the elbow freely. That's not an issue at all. You will find that naturally the pullover position puts you in an internally rotated position where you're like this. It doesn't mean that you cannot tuck. So once you're in position and the dumbbell is above your head, I encourage you to rotate your elbows inwards like you're seeing in the following video. This is going to help you recruit more lats. It's also going to make it harder to go into overflexion of the shoulder, and it's going to also protect the joint so as to make sure that you never get injured on that movement. Now, an advice you will get a lot from people who teach you how to do pullovers as well is to reach as far as you can. And that is also a bad cue, because this leads to overextension of the shoulder. Instead, what I recommend is focus on stretching the rib cage and keep a slight bend in the arm. Not necessarily because this is best for the recruitment of the muscle of the lats or the rib cage, but rather because by bending the arm, you're going to make it impossible to overextend the shoulder. So that is a good cue that you can try as well. So step by step, this is how you should be doing your pullovers. You get in position, you extend the arm while stretching the rib cage and the lat. As you go into the negative, you inhale, that is very important, to emphasize the expansion of the rib cage even more and to cue that stretching as much as possible. Reach behind your body without overextending. And once you have reached the point where the rib cage and the lats are maximally stretched, you revert back into the positive as you exhale. Once you are in this position, I encourage you to keep the dumbbell above your head. Many people like to bring it above their chest. That is a position if you want to rest. However, whoever does it just to get a chest squeeze is not really getting much at all. If anything, now you have to cue back into the stretching position so as to be able to revert back into the negative, which could disengage the lat and be the reason why you don't actually feel the pullover in your lat. Now, if you followed all of these cues and you still don't feel pullovers in your lats, here are a few other options you can try as well. The first one is try them with a barbell. Many people find that when they're not in this internally rotated position with a dumbbell and it's a more neutral position of the shoulder, they are able to feel it more. Another tip would be to maximally flex the arms. So instead of doing them with extended arms like this, you're going to allow for maximum bend of the elbow. It sounds weird, but if you look at the way many people do machine pullovers, they do them like this. You can try to do that with a barbell as well. In many people that I spoke to that were struggling to feel it, the issue is that the extended arm was creating too much distance between the shoulder and the top of the hand, which was reducing the recruitment of the lat. So that could also be an option. And if this also doesn't work, you could try with other implements. As I said, the best of the best is dumbbell pullovers, but if you feel them better with a cable, fuck it, do them with a cable. But at the end of the day, I want you to keep this in mind. Sensation doesn't necessarily mean recruitment. For the most part, sensation on a movement comes and goes. I do pullovers all the time. Sometimes I feel them like crazy in my lats. Sometimes I don't really. But I keep doing them because I know for a fact that just because I don't feel it in the muscle does not mean that it doesn't work. You could be someone that is like me and has low sensitivity. It doesn't mean that you're not going to grow from it. So I encourage you to stick to them still, because if you can do them painless using the advice I gave you, you should still see good results even if you don't feel them in your lats. Now, in terms of reps and sets recommendations, I personally never go lower than 6 reps for the simple reason that what gives in the pullover in terms of injury is always the shoulder joint. If you never go below than 6, that risk is mitigated to almost 0. So that keeps you safe and you get quality reps. Because keep in mind that even though we don't overextend the shoulder joint, we still want to get good range of motion and we want slow negatives. This is the type of lift that you want to suffer through. And in terms of upper range of rep range, I recommend 15 reps. So 6 to 15 is your playground. 6 to 10 is gorgeous. 8 to 12 is great as well. 10 to 15 is beautiful. You cannot go wrong with that rep range. And then in terms of frequency, you can do them once or twice a week. I like to do them heavy and medium heavy. So 100% intensity or 70%. For me, it's because I find that to build a better connection with the lat, if you always go heavy, you'll always be in that killer mindset of I have to get the reps done, which tends to lead to rushing through the reps because of the stress and not having a good connection and sensation. So by also doing them light once a week as well, I correct that problem, I get more work in, and I get the best of both worlds. But keep in mind that if you are just getting started with pullovers, once a week, 3 sets is going to be plenty. It'll also give you some time to build the shoulder mobility needed, because on top of being a lat builder, a ribcage expander, pullovers are great for shoulder mobility. Only issue being that if you are overzealous and you try to go too deep, too fast, you're going to get hurt. So let range of motion build up over time and you will be just fine. But keep in mind this, and this will be my closing statement for this video. As good as pullovers are, as magical as they may be, because they are magical, it's one of the most underrated bodybuilding movements of all times. If you don't do them frequently, nothing will happen. Again, too many of the videos that promote the pullover sell it to you like, oh, in 2 weeks you'll look like Steve Reeves. No, Steve Reeves did them for 4 years straight, and this is what gave him results. It's the same in this case for me. I started seeing massive changes in my physique 2 years into doing them twice a week, every week, without skipping a single week. So don't make the mistake of just trying them once or twice and saying, well, nothing is happening. Of course, no lift will make a drastic change in your body in only 2 weeks. Stick to them for a full year and get back to me and tell me what it has done to your physique. I guarantee you that One, you'll thank me, and then you'll thank yourself for having included pullovers in your regimen. And I'm going to leave you with that. Any questions you have about the lift, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you very soon.